Okay. Starting with number 1, you needed to simplify this. You have two binomials that you need to multiply. So this may look familiar, may not, but what we're doing is taking the first term, multiplying it here to the first term in the second set of parentheses. So you get negative 12x squared. Taking the first term and multiplying it to the last term in the second set of parentheses, you get 18x. Taking that second term and multiplying it to the first and the second set of parentheses to get 10x. And taking that negative and multiplying it by 3 to get negative 15. After you do all that, combine your terms to get 28x. So your final answer would be negative 12x squared plus 28x minus 15. Questions on that one? Number 2 is another combining by terms where you have to distribute. So you get 12x minus 6y minus 12x plus 3y, and then you have a 6x at the end. Combine all of your x's together. 2 minus 12 gives us negative 10. Plus 6 will give us negative 4x. And combine our y's. Negative 6y plus 3y will give us negative 3y. Questions on that one? Number 3 asks you which points are not solutions. So if you plotted the points, that would be anything that does not fall in the shaded area, or because this line is dashed, any point that falls on the line. So there would be 2 that are not solutions, 0, 3 because it falls on the line, and 5, 1 because it does not fall in the shaded area. Questions on that one? Number 4 is asking for the equation of the line that passes through this point and has a slope of negative 3/2. So there's a couple different ways you could have done this. 1, plot the point for negative 1. Use your slope of up 3 to the left 2 as many times as possible so you get a y-intercept. Use that slope and y-intercept and put them together. Or use the point and slope in your point slope formula, which we're actually going to be doing today. So if you don't remember that, that's okay. And get that same thing. And number 5, we have to graph our inequality. So start at our y-intercept, negative 1. Go up 2 to the right 1 as many times as possible. Down 2 to the left 1 as many times as possible. This will be a solid line because it's equal to. And this is less than, so it's be shaded below your y-intercept, so everything is right here. Question on either of those two? So everyone should have notes that look like this. We are going to briefly go through some of these examples, starting with how do we write equations from a graph, and then move on to some of the more complex ones. So I'm going to do like 2 of each type of question. And we're going to start with number 3. Remember that we are not doing every single problem with these. We are to take notes. As much as you have here, you'll be able to use on the quiz. Very hard for this before lunch. So with number 3, we need to find 2 things, our slope and our y-intercept. Y-intercept is the easier of the 2, because it's wherever it crosses, this line crosses the y-axis. Where does it cross the y-axis? At 2. So we know this is a positive 2. Our equation is going to start with y equals, we need to find our slope. We're going to have some x, and at the end we're going to put plus 2. Now we just need to find our slope. We need to find another point on this graph that goes through the lines in the background exactly. There is one drawn. at this point right here. If you didn't see that point, this point would also work. And remember that our slope is rise over run. So from any of those points, we have to count how far we're going up and over, or if we're going backwards, down and to the left. What would that slope be? Up 2 to the right 5, or down 2 to the left 5. Remember that a negative over a negative is a positive, so you get a positive slope either way. Before we continue, what questions do we have on that? Number 4, same thing. What is our y-intercept? Positive 1. So this is going to start off y equals, we're going to have some slope, so I'm going to leave a space, x plus 1. And then we need to find our slope. Look for another point on the line that crosses the grid lines exactly. There is one drawn. You can see that one. There's another one over here. From there, we have to count down and to the right. Because down is a negative, our slope is going to be negative, and right is positive. What would our slope be? Negative 3. So our equation would be y equals negative 3x plus 1. Questions on that? Number 5, what is our y-intercept? Positive 3. So I'm going to start up our equation, y equals, leave a space, x plus 3. And find another point that goes to the grid lines exactly. There is a point drawn, but this point would also work. So depending on where you're counting from, you're either counting up and to the right or down and to the left. That would be a negative over a negative, which would make a positive. What is our slope? 3 over 2. So y equals 3 over 2x plus 3 is our equation. Questions on that one? And then number 6, what is our y-intercept? Y equals, leave a space, x. Find another point that crosses the grid line exactly. This point was drawn, but this point would also work. And depending on where you are looking at, we're going to be going down and to the right, so this is going to be a negative, or up and to the left, that would also be a negative, because we're going to have one thing that's being negative. What would our slope be? Negative 2 over 3. So our equation would be y equals negative 2/3 x minus 2. Right. We will stop there and finish after lunch. If it helps you, go back and rewrite this. You can write this right next to that I just did it. Remember that these letters mean horizontal lines, 0 slope, and y equals, and then the opposite, vertical lines, undefined slope, x equals. Yeah, I'm still leaving. We're just going to go through some of these examples. For number 1, is this a horizontal or vertical line? Vertical, so x or y equals x equals. And you would find what x equals, which is -2, and write that equation. Number 2, horizontal or vertical line? Horizontal, so that's x or y equals y, and then we find what y equals, and that is 3. How would we write number 3? Y equals -5 because it's horizontal. And for number 4, x equals. Have questions on any of those? We're going to move on to the next page. That should look like this. For questions where you're given the slope and given the y-intercept, you just have to put those together in your equation or in your slope-intercept form equation. So if we have a slope of 2 and a y-intercept of -1, how would we write that in slope-intercept form? Y equals 2x minus 1. How would we write number 2? This is a negative. Y equals -3 over 5x plus 4. Now we're going to switch gears. Now we're given equations in standard form and we need to convert them back to slope-intercept form. Starting with number 2, does anyone remember how we do that? You're close. You're taking the 4x and you're going to move it to the other side. So whatever it is, do the opposite. It's positive, so we're going to subtract it over to the other side. So we have 5y equals, then I'm going to take these two things and switch the order. So that it's -4. Nope, not that one. This one. -4x minus 30. And then divide everything back up. Do that separately. So the 5 would cancel, so you have just y. This we would just leave as a fraction, -4 over 5x. And -30 divided by 5 is -6. We are converting it from standard form to slope-intercept form. Do we have any questions on that? The next one. For number 3, how would we start that? The x, same way, by subtracting. We have -3y equals, I'm going to switch the order of these two, -x plus 12. And then divide everything, just like we did before, but by -3 now. So your signs may change. They'll change, as I said. What would our equation be? x over 3, or you can say 1/3 x. Even though they look different, those are the same thing. Do we have any questions on that one? Let's go to the next page. Somewhere on your paper, write your point-slope formula. I know it's been a while since I've done that, so you might remember what it is. Remember that this helps us if we have a point and slope. If we're given 2 points, we have to find the slope first, but we'll cross that bridge in a second. So for an example like number 1, slope is our m, 2 will be our x1, 1 will be our y1, and we would put those 3 numbers into our formula and start to solve. The y and the x by themselves would stay the same. Y minus 1 equals times x minus 2. If we want to get this back in slope-intercept form, what would we do here? First, y minus 1 equals x minus 6, and then add 1 to both sides. End up with the equation y equals 3x minus 5. Questions do we have on that before we do another example? Do number 2. Same thing. 4 is our x1, 2 is our y1, slope is our m. We're going to put those 3 into our formula and solve. Y minus 2 equals 1/2 times x minus 2. Distribute. So y minus 2 equals 1/2 x. 1/2 times negative 4 is what? That is 2. And then if we add 2, we would get 0. So y equals 1/2 x, or you can put 1/2 x plus 0, either or. Questions on that? Number 3, x1, y1, m. These two didn't have this, but when you have a negative x1 or y1, you would have a minus minus, so you would have a change to plus. Okay, you'll see that in a second. We have y minus negative 7 equals -1 times x minus 4. And we would need to make these two negatives a plus. I'm going to do that at the same time I distribute. And then get rid of the 7 by subtracting on both sides. If you don't change this to a plus, it's going to throw everything off. Do that. So y equals -1/3 x. Y equals -1x minus 3. I said 1/3. I combined them. So if you have a slope and a point, that's all you do. Questions on that? Now we're going to try 3 of the ones below this, and then you'll have time to practice. Writing both formulas so you have them. How we find our slope and our point slope formula once again. So for these, we are now given 2 points. So we have to find our slope before we can put it in point slope formula. So for number 2, if we are finding our slope, we're going to use this. Remember that you can label these x1, y1, x2, y2. It helps you remember. And then we would start with y2, so -8. And we're subtracting y1, so -12. Over x2, so 4, minus x1, so minus a -1. And we would need to subtract and simplify. -8 minus 12 would give us -20. 4 minus a -1, that would become a plus. So 4 plus 1 is +5. Simplify always. You can put that in your calculator or divide it to simplify using your alpha. But this one we could just divide -20 by 5 gives us -4. That's our m values. After you have your m, you can choose either point. Don't do both, but choose either set of points that you want and put it back into point slope. Do we want to use the first set or the second set? If you want to use the second set, you can do that. So then this equation or this format would be y minus y1 would be 12 equals our slope of -4 times x minus our x1 is -1. Before you distribute, if you have a negative, you have to change that to a plus. If you know that you're going to have a negative and want to change it to a plus automatically, do that. You can do that. And then distribute. The -4x minus 4. And then add 12 to both sides. Let's do that in this space. So what would our final equation be? has more steps and there's more to it, but you're really just doing the same thing as you did before. The only extra piece is you have to now find your slope. What questions do we have on that before we do another? We're going to do two more, number 4, number 6, and then you will have to. Number 4, we still need to find our slope, but you recognize what this is. If I were to graph that thing, where would that fall? So that means this is your y-intercept. We don't have to put in a point and find that y-intercept because we're given it. So after we find our slope, we just put that directly into our equation. But first, let's find our slope. So y2 would be 8, y1 would be 3, so minus 3, over x2 would be 0, minus x1 would be negative 1, so minus the negative. 8 minus 3 would give us 5, and 0 minus a negative 1 would be 0 plus 1, 0 plus 1, which is 1. If we simplify this, what would that be? Just 5. And now we have our slope, we have our y-intercept, so we can write our equation. Y equals 5x plus 8. Without doing that extra work. Now if you didn't remember that you were given your y-intercept, you could go back and put one of those points in and find that same y-intercept. Do we have any questions on the problem? And last one, number 6. Find our slope. So that would be negative 2 minus 5 over 5 minus negative 2. What would our slope be? Negative 7 over positive 7, which would simplify to be negative 1. Of the 2 points we have, which one do we want to use? First to the second one.
Sorry.
You say it doesn't matter.
Nobody said anything.
Okay, so for the second one, we're going to use y minus negative 2 equals negative 1, and then x minus 5. Because our y has a negative negative, we can make that a plus and distribute at the same time. So this would be negative x plus y. And then subtract 2 on both sides. What would our final equation be? No. So there are many examples we did not do in this. Before I let you practice, were there any that you saw that maybe you had a question on or wanted to go over all together before? not, you have this time to do as many practice problems you feel like you need. Remember, the more you have filled out, the more you'll have to look back on when you take your quiz. So use this time and do practice problems.